Hey everyone, this is Glenn Greenwald, and I'm here with a short and special episode of System Update, our home on Rumble. And I wanted to tell you about a very exciting new announcement that was made today, in which I and several other independent journalists am involved. As you might recall, last week we did our first live stream here on Rumble, where I was able to not only talk about the importance of platforms like Rumble and Substack, but also take questions from some of you, and we're going to continue to do that on a weekly basis or so. And one of the points I made when I talked about the importance of platforms like Rumble is the urgent need to have new ways that people can communicate, journalists, other activists, citizens, without centralized corporate and state control, policing, and censoring our speech. And that one of my primary priorities is to work with and promote and fortify platforms that are devoted to those values of free speech and free discourse and free inquiry. And the platform that we are now involved with as a result of this new announcement is called Callin, and there you see the logo. It's Callin. It's currently available only on iPhone, so if you have an iPhone, you can, and I hope will, download it. It will shortly be available on Androids and on the web as well. It's just kind of in a test stage at the moment, unveiled on iPhone, working very well. Soon it'll be on every other platform. And the idea of it is that it is essentially a place to be able to speak in audio form and to have podcast shows. And it's incredibly innovative technologically, allowing people like me to do all sorts of innovative things that can't be done on other platforms. The most exciting part of it for me is how interactive it is. So unlike, say, on Rumble, where I can do videos, and I will, and I can take questions, on Callin, it actually enables people to participate essentially as a live audience while a podcast show is being recorded. If you're on the app and the podcast is about to begin, you can enter that room. It's similar to Clubhouse in that regard. And if you have a question, if you have something you want to say to the person who's the host, for example, of me, you can indicate that you have a question. You can then be heard. We can have a dialogue and a conversation. And the reason I consider that so crucial is because when I began writing about politics in 2005, the old media model at the time was one where journalists kind of spoke from this mountaintop in monologue form. And they kind of pronounced and pontificated and almost never heard back from their readership. Occasionally, someone would write a letter to the editor saying, you know, I really don't agree with this statement or don't believe this news account was fair, and they would kind of laugh at it. No one would read it, and that would be the full extent of the ability of the public to penetrate their bubble. And when I began writing about politics, it was in the advent of the age of blogs. I had just created a blog, and every time I would write an article, I would spend the next hour or two in the comment section of my blog interacting with my readers. And I had really smart readers like I do now. And they would say, you know, there's some more evidence that I think you missed, or here's a gap in your logical argument, or here's why I don't agree. And we would go back and forth. And it was a crucial form of two things. One, of just a journalistic asset. So many of the most important stories I wrote about early on came from my readers through that interaction. But also, it's a really important form of journalistic accountability. One of the things we're seeing is when these journalists, these corporate media outlets, get caught lying, spreading propaganda and deceit and falsehoods like they so often do. Like they just got caught with the Steele dossier, before that with the Hunter Biden archive being Russian disinformation, and so many other instances. They don't have to answer to anybody. They're in a ensconced bubble. And so you can present the definitive proof that they lied, and they really don't have to tell their listeners about it at all. So I really find that model to be corrupting, and I've never liked it. So in Substack, for example, I often go into the comment section and interact with my readers. On Rumble, the reason I've started to do live streams is so that I can take questions, but Callin will kind of take it a step further, that component of it, by allowing not just a text question that fleetingly rushes across the screen or a comment, but an actual conversation with readers. It'll enable me to do that with my Substack subscribers, and I find that, again, not just an important journalistic asset, but also a really crucial form of journalistic accountability. I feel like if you're someone like me who seeks out a public platform and wants to influence the public discourse, then you have the responsibility to engage with good faith critics, people who have questions about the work that you're doing and what you're saying, and things that they think are deficient in it. And in that conversation, I believe you can look at it in a cowardly way and say, oh, I want to run away from my critics. I don't want to have people see the flaws in my work exposed. Or you can say, actually, that will strengthen my work so much, because either I'll fortify my conviction about the journalism I've done by hearing from my critics and believing they're wrong, or I'll see the validity in their critique and make my journalism stronger. So that is the principal value for me, the principal idea of it. Now, here's the release from Callin, where they announced several of the independent journalists who have moved with me in this first batch of people who are going there. And you can see it includes my colleague and my good friend, Matt Taibbi, the great independent journalist who writes along with me on Substack. Also, Brianna Joy Gray, who was the press secretary for Bernie Sanders. She also worked with me at The Intercept. And if you said to me, name 3 of the most interesting, independent-minded, and honest leftists, which I would encourage you, if you're not on the left, to seek out the smartest, most interesting, independent-minded, and fair people who have an ideology different than yours, I would definitely name Brianna. I'm thrilled that she also is going. She's a friend of mine. She excels, in my view, in engaging in very smart, open-minded dialogue with everybody across the spectrum. You also see there Antonio Garcias Martinez, who you might know because he was an author and had been hired just a few months ago by Apple. And because his novel contained passages that offended a lot of the woke factions within Apple, he was fired by Apple before he was able even to start his job. He's an incredibly heterodox thinker. He's really well known in Silicon Valley. He's become even more prolific and interesting and compelling and provocative since that incident at Apple kind of emancipated him. And now he's going to be at Callin having his own show. And then finally is Andre Domis, who is a Canadian leftist. And I would put him along with Brianna in that same category of people who, especially if you're not on the left, is really worth listening to, because he presents his case in as compelling of a way as possible. He's a friend of mine. We interact all the time. We have dialogue and debates just in private on the phone about the differences we have. We have a lot of commonalities, including a belief in civil liberties, opposition to authoritarianism and state surveillance, but we also have differences. And so part of the idea is he and I are going to have a kind of joint podcast where we explore those differences and those similarities. So you can see here, the podcast that Andre and I are both doing is called Unredacted. That's the logo for it. And then you can see here as well, the page of mine, which is just named the Glenn Greenwald Podcast for simplicity's sake. And what I really intend to do to use this is, when I write articles on Substack, they tend to be more in-depth, heavily written, researched, fact-checked, edited articles. So realistically, I can write 1 a week or 2 a week. I don't think it's possible to really do more than that without compromising the quality. Rumble is designed to kind of be in the middle ground where I can just speak like this. But I don't really like just doing YouTube style rants on Rumble. I generally try and put together an in-depth evidentiary case that I can walk you through with evidence and graphics and videos. A lot of you who have seen that know what I'm trying to do here on Rumble. Callin is going to be something where I'm going to be able to just be kind of more reactive. So if I see something or read something, if I want to say something in the immediacy of the news cycle or the moment, it's something I can just literally pick up my phone and speak into live, and then it will get saved as a podcast. So I'll promote it on Twitter. I can promote it in other venues to my readers and say, I'm going to be on Callin in 20 minutes to talk about this subject. I'll take questions. We can have a conversation. And anyone who has Callin and who just, all you have to do is download it and you'll have an account, can then enter the room. Or once the web version is up, you can actually listen to it either on the app or on the website as well. So it automatically gets saved. It's just a different, and I think a really important means of doing more journalism. And since it's a platform devoted to the values I really believe in, to enable people to have their own podcast without having to have a lot of resources, a big team, it's incredibly user-friendly. The technology is amazing. And because of this interactive feature, it's something I really want to see grow. It's just another platform that is free of the tyranny of Facebook and Google and big tech censorship and the liberal corporate media that has kind of commandeered that power. There's going to be some terms of service like Rumble has, but the idea is you're not going to get censored because you have the wrong ideology or the wrong politics. It's intended to be a place of free discourse. I believe that the people who founded it are genuinely and authentically committed to that, which is why I'm there. So if it's something that you're interested in, and I hope it is, I hope you'll download the app. I will start to post on Twitter and in other places when I intend to use it. I think everybody who I just mentioned is going with me is really worth paying attention to in terms of their work. You can follow them on Twitter as well. And that's the app. It's Callin. It's launched just a few weeks ago. The functionality is amazing. And I think that it's going to become part of this new independent ecosystem that is growing rapidly, that is devoted to independent voices who do not want their speech policed by centralized corporate and state power. So I hope that you'll join me there, and I hope you enjoy the content we produce there. Thanks very much.